Hello everyone, Gabriel here. Welcome to the Inside ChronoScan webinar. Just another day at the office. Today we are going to focus on the usual ChronoScan user. We are going to talk about Ocr zones and how to capture specific areas on our documents using said zones. So let's say we have the usual set of documents and we want to scan them. We want to capture the desired information, and we want to export that information and the documents for digital archiving. So how do we do it inside ChronoScan? We have to create a job, we have to input our documents, and we have to extract the information and export it. That's very, very easy. And then we only have to worry about reading errors. And those are the rule. If you don't have any errors, any reading errors on your documents, you are the exception to the rule and very lucky. Your documents are pretty good. And we also have to worry about when we have new documents that are not similar to the previous ones. But if you don't want to spend the time setting those up, you can just hire our support team to set them up for you. That's very cool. That said, let's jump into ChronoScan. Inside ChronoScan, you can see I have two setups for us today. The first one is just single image documents. We have invoices with only one page. And what I did here, I used Intelli-Tags to capture some of the data, and then I used the Ocr Zones to capture what the Intelli-Tag couldn't capture. And if those two doesn't work, we just use manual input. But by the time we have all the Ocr Zones and the Intelli-Tag set up, the manual input is very little. We don't have to do much manual input at all. And the second setup is pretty much the same, but besides having less data to capture, because we don't have time to do a full setup again, we also have documents with more than one page. So we have to worry about splitting the documents, and then we can worry about capturing the data. So that's it. Let's start our setup. To start the setup, let's just click on the new batch button and let's run the job wizard to create a new job. I'm going to call it single image invoice capture. And then click on next. We are not going to activate Intelli-Tag right now because that will just use the ChronoScan's built-in lists. And I just want to show you how Intelli-Tags work. And we are going to learn how to build our own lists on this webinar. So I just disable this one and let's move on. We have single image documents, that's perfect. We have invoice fields and we are not going to use the order number. So I'll just remove it. We can move on now. We are going to set up the output, the export in a little bit. Click next, and here we make sure we have everything good. We have single image, we have all of our fields. That's cool, so I'll just click on finish. Let's create now our first batch. Single image invoice capture batch 1. Perfect. I will just click on create batch here. And now we are ready to import our documents. I have several TIFFs that were scanned. So I'm just going to go on the documents and image input toolbox here. And instead of choosing the Twain scanner, I'm just going to import images. And to start importing, I will click on the start input. Here you can see we have a few configurations. And if we don't want to import TIFF, we can use the JPEG, the PDF, and I believe we can even change the extension mask here and do PNGs also. But that wouldn't make much sense, I believe. Here I'm just going to select the folder where all of my files are. They are on the desktop. This folder here, I'll just click OK. And we can explore it or we can just import it. I'll just click on here to import our files. And you can see they will be imported, and after that we will be ready to start working. As I told you before, we have several different documents. So I'm just going to start with the first one. Let's go up here. And the first thing is we are going to create a Intelli-Tag list. We can associate one Intelli-Tag list with each of those fields here, except document type. That's a different type of information. And we are going to start with the invoice number. The supplier is a little bit different, and I'm going to talk about it after we have everything else set up. To set up the invoice number as a Intelli-Tag, or to attach a Intelli-Tag list to that field here, I'm just going to click on the field and then click on the Intelli-Tag search button here. And then I'm just going to select the text I want ChronoScan to look for. I will use invoice number, that bit of text here. And then ChronoScan will ask me if I want to assign a Intelli-Tag list to the invoice number field. I will just click yes. And if I click OK here, that list already exists and it belongs to the previous setup I already did. So I'm just going to call it invoice no. There we go, invoice number. I will click OK, and then that window will show up. That's a very important window here. We can set up the text that ChronoScan will be looking for on our documents. We can set up the fuzzy search. And then here we can select near where ChronoScan will be looking for. So let's say that every time ChronoScan finds that text, I want it to capture the nearest code, or the nearest code at the right, or the nearest code below. And we have all of those options here. The one that makes sense for me right now is the code at the right. So I'll just select it here. And that is if we want to search a value in the document. We can also set a static value, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. That's the one we're going to use for the supplier. Here we can also play with weights, and on those options here we have some of them, but the main one is that Intelli-Tag only for this document type. I want to use that Intelli-Tag for all of my documents. That's just to make everything faster. So I'm just going to deselect this one, and that will make the Intelli-Tag global. And then when I click OK, and then it will ask me to activate the Intelli-Tag search on the process. I will just click yes, and ChronoScan will process, and you can see that it successfully found the code we were looking for. That seems very easy, but then we have to create another values on our invoice number list, because not all of our documents have the invoice number expressed or labeled like this. So let's keep going. Let's look at the invoice date. To set up this one, I'm going to use the date text here. Again, I select the field, then I go on the Intelli-Tag search, and then I select the text that ChronoScan shall be looked for. I will assign it to a new list, and I just want to make sure I don't conflict with the name of the existing lists. I just call it Invoice Date with capitals, and then click OK. Okay, that one already exists. I think it doesn't recognize capitals for invoice list name. So what I'm going to do is call it simply date. And then click OK. You can see now we want that text, date, and 2 dots. But that's not very good using the 2 dots because sometimes the ChronoScan the OCR engine actually might make a mess with those two dots after the word. So I'm just going to use the word here. And instead of searching for the nearest valid date, I want to look at the nearest valid date at the right. And obviously, I don't want to make it only for this document. I want it to be global. So I'll deselect this one and then click OK. Now ChronoScan will process. And you can see it failed to look for the text. I bet it is because of those two dots here. So what I'm going to do, and this is how you edit Intelli-Tags, you can see this symbol here to the right of the fields, and every time you see those symbols, it means that there is a Intelli-Tag list assigned to that field here. I just click here and then the Intelli-Tag menu will show up. As we have fuzzy set to 0, ChronoScan will only set the Intelli-Tag when it finds date alone, and here date have 2 dots. So to go around that, I will just increase the fuzzy. Let's see how it works with just one. I will just click OK and that will save the changes. And you can see that setting the fuzzy to 1 makes everything all right. So you always have to make sure fuzzy is not too big nor too small. Now let's look at the net total. That here is called subtotal. What I'm going to do again is click on the field here, click on the Intelli-Tag search, and then I'm just going to mark subtotal. I will assign to a new list and I'm going to call it, oh, that's text total. I'm making a mistake here. Let me cancel it and then select the net total. Subtotal is the net total. So I just click here on the right one, and then I will create the Intelli-Tag. I will click yes, and I will just call it net. And let me tell you that when ChronoScan is looking for Intelli-Tags on the text on your documents, it is not case sensitive. So you can either have subtotal or subtotal. It doesn't really matter. And since it is a small word and it doesn't have anything after it, we can just set fuzzy to 0. And we want to search for the nearest valid amount on the right. And that's very important, especially here because we have several values here. And we don't want ChronoScan to use other values besides the right one here. I will just make it global and then click OK. Let's see how it works. We can see it grabbed the correct value and that's perfect. Now let's go to the text. The text is that one here and I'm going to use all of it. Again, I click on the field, go on the Intelli-Tag and mark this one here. I will assign to a new list. I'm going to call it text. Okay. We want to use that text and I might not want so much fuzzy here. Let's just set it to 0 and I want to look the nearest valid amount at the right again. And I don't want it to be specific, type specific. Let's see how it works again. We can see it works great. And now let's do the total. Again, same setup process. There we go. We want to assign to a new list. That will be called total. And then fuzzy at 0. And I want to look for the nearest valid amount at the right again and not global. I will click OK and then we will see how it works. So it's working very good for this one. We are just missing the supplier, but I'm just going to talk about the supplier later on. From what you could see now, we can say that Intelli-Tag is a special type of trigger. So when ChronoScan finds that word, it will trigger a search. So it will look for the action, it will perform the action that we just set up. We can either use search for something at the right, or the top, or the bottom, or around it. That's basically what Intelli-Tag is. It is a special kind of trigger. Now, our Intelli-Tags certainly don't work for all of our documents. So I'm just going to go to this document here. And let's wait for ChronoScan to read it. And let's see how our Intelli-Tags work for this document. And if we look here, let's just click on Process Document and let's make sure Execute Intelli-Tag is selected. When we click OK, we will see that probably no data will be captured. And that's because of some factors. First, we can see that that text cannot be captured by ChronoScan. And then down here, we can see that that text is also not very well detected. And even those values here, sometimes because of all of those lines around, we don't have a very reliable capture. We can either try to set up some Intelli-Tags, or we can just use zones here. And because we have so many problems, I'm just going to use zones. And when we make zones, we have to be sure to know that those zones are only type specific. So they will only work for that type of document here, type 001. So let's create the zones. I will click here on the invoice number and then OCR zone mode. I will make the zone. And then for the date, the same procedure. There we go. Now the net total is down there. Net amount. That is perfect. The text total is that VAT amount here. And you can see we could use VAT amount. But to avoid any problems, I will just create a zone here. And now that one. If we are lucky, it will be correctly captured, and it was perfect. Now, when we move to the other documents, we are never sure if our zones will work. I will process this one. It will identify the type, and then it will read the OCR areas. And the first thing we see is that that value down here, it is not being read. We can either change our OCR engine, or we can just open the advanced capture settings, clicking on this button here. We click on the zone and then click on this button here. You can see it is capturing only the dot. And why is it capturing only that area? Because we have edges on. What I'm going to do is just turn it off. And you can see the value is actually being correctly captured. I will just click OK. And it shows there, so it is perfect. For that type of document, I believe we are set. Let me see another type of document. Let's see this one here. We first must check how many problems we might have. You can see here our date is working. Our total is not exactly working because the invoice total is capturing the tax total. So we have to work a little bit on that. And then we have some other errors. Let's first work on the total here. How we can fix that kind of error. We can either create a type specific Intelli-Tag, or we can try to improve on our list. Let's try to improve on our list and see how it works out. I go to the invoice total field and let's open the Intelli-Tag options here. And you can see we have only total, and that total shows up on many types of fields. So first thing, let's try to add a new one. And I'm just going to use invoice total. Fuzzy set to 0. And we want the nearest valid amount at the right. And I don't want it to be type specific. Let's click OK and then OK again. And we can see it didn't fix our issue. So let's try one more thing. And that is increasing the weight. Let's see how it works. Again, we didn't get the desired result. So let's make that one type specific. And what will happen is that now, whenever ChronoScan sees that document type, it will look for that Intelli-Tag instead of the other one. Let's now keep working on the other lists, the text total. We can add total VAT amount. We can either open the menu and add the text manually, or we can just click here, click on the Intelli-Tag search, select the text, and then it will add the value to the Intelli-Tag list without having to do anything else. We want that text, and we want fuzzy to be 0 again. We want only exact matches. And we want the nearest valid amount at the right. We don't want it to be type specific. So let's click OK and see how it goes. It is capturing perfectly. Now we have to worry about the net amount. Again, we just have to improve our Intelli-Tag list. Again, we click here. We click on the Intelli-Tag. Let's select the text. And then fuzzy 0, if you have many different documents, you might want to use fuzzy as 0. That is pretty much the same thing as using a type specific. But if we have that same text on our other documents, it will work perfectly. And that's what we want. I will just click OK. And let's see how it works. It's working pretty good. We just need the invoice number. Let's click on the field. Let's look for it. We can see that's the text. So again, we click here, we click on the Intelli-Tag. We select the text. Let's make it fuzzy 0. And let's look for the nearest code at the right. We don't want it to be type specific. And then we click OK. ChronoScan will process the document, and then we can see how it works. And it's working perfectly. Now, let's keep moving through our documents, and after a while, we will want to just process everything and see how our Intelli-Tags are working. We can see here that one was very well captured. We just missed the VAT total, and that's what I'm going to do. Let's click on the text total, click on the Intelli-Tag, select the text. We want to make it 0 fuzzy, and then we want to look at the nearest valid amount at the right. It is global, and then we click OK, and it's working perfectly. We don't have the invoice number. Let's see how it is here. Okay, it is different here. We want to look at a different place, but the text is pretty much the same. We can either use only that text here, fuzzy set at 0, and we can look for the code below or nearest code. Since those ones are always we don't have many values next to it, we might just leave it at nearest code, and then we click OK. Let's see how it works. It works perfectly, but the date we are not getting. That's the date of the document. So let's just add that text to the Intelli-Tag list. Invoice date here, Intelli-Tag, text date. And when text date shows up, we want to look at the nearest valid date. Let's not make it global, not make it type specific, and then click OK. It works perfectly. So those documents should be all right. Let's move to a different one. Let's try this one here. We have the type, we have the date, and we have the total. The total is correct. Let's make sure it is the correct one, because here we have two totals. Okay. The date's perfect. Now let's add the invoice number here. I will just select the entire text here. Fuzzy set to 0 again, just to be safe. And we want the code at the right. And make it global, and then click OK. Now it's being correctly grabbed. Now let's take a look. I believe that's the correct amount we are looking for. So let's make the text total, the VAT amount. Let's click on the field, Intelli-Tag again, and that is what we are going to do a lot. VAT amount, fuzzy 0, and then amount at the right. Not make it specific, and then click OK. It is good. And then the net total, which is charges here. Same thing again. Charges. There we go. 0. And amount at the right. So that's it. That's basically it. We are going to fill in our lists until we are tired of doing it. And then we can process. Let's do this last one. And then we process all of our documents to see how our lists are working. And so that means that our capture will only be as good as our lists. Let's see here. Text total. That's only VAT. And that's not very good because it is only one word. But let's try it anyways. Let's create the Intelli-Tag and add that text. 0, not global. You can see that depending on the size and how many words we have on our Intelli-Tag, ChronoScan will automatically set the search, the fuzzy level. I'm just going to leave at 0. This time ChronoScan guessed it right. And I want the valid amount at the right. I'll click OK. Let's see how it works. And it might conflict with other documents, so we have to do a bit of tweaking here and there until we get the best result, meaning that it is all a matter of compromise. We can never have everything perfect. We have to work with whatever we have. Let's select the nearest valid amount at the right, and then let's see if it's good. It is perfect. Invoice date is not being captured. Let's look for the date. There we go. Here's the date. The text is good, so let's use it. That text, I believe, is already on our list. Let me take a look here. No, we don't have it. Perfect. So let's create it. And since the date is below, and for dates that's usually true, we can just use nearest valid date, because dates don't have many other dates around. We tend to have problems with those ones that have values all over it. So we might not get away by selecting only the nearest valid amount. We might have to use amount at the right. And even then, we might have some problems. And if we have those problems and they take a long time to get around, we can just create a OCR zone. Let's see the invoice number. There we go. There is the text here. And that one we certainly do have. There we go. that's looking for the code at the right. So I'm just going to change it to nearest code and click OK and OK again. And the invoice was grabbed. Perfect. I would do just one more. And then we can process everything and see how good our list is. Let's wait for ChronoScan to process it. The invoice total is good. We don't have a tax total. We can just leave it blank. Let's make the net total. And that amount is not a very good value. So what I'm going to do is just create the Intelli-Tag with it. But this time I really want to make sure the fuzzy is at 0. And if we get errors because of that, I will just remove that Intelli-Tag and create a OCR zone. I want it to be global. I can also make it just type specific. Let's see how it works. At the right, so click OK. It is being captured. Now the invoice number is up there. Let's go up. There we go. Let's add that text to the list. Invoice number. And if we take a look, we can see that the OCR engine can't read that text. And it is probably because we have those lines here. So here we don't have another choice. We have to set up a OCR zone. I will change to the OCR zone modes and then create the zones here. You can see that the regular page OCR doesn't work, but when I create a zone, the zone OCR works perfectly because we are isolating the area. We don't have all those lines around, we just have those numbers. So the reading doesn't have any errors. Invoice date is the same thing, we don't have the date. So I'm just going to create the date here, the zone for the dates. And you can see it is perfect. We don't have a net total or tax total, we have a net total. So again, we are going to go back here and let's see how good our lists are. To see it, I will just click here to select everything on the grid view. Click here to select everything. Then we reset to the default and click yes. So now the documents are as they came, imported into ChronoScan. And then I will select all again, process, and make sure I have Intelli-Tag and fields selected here. I will just click OK. And for Intelli-Tags, we need image OCR. So I just click OK. And let's see how many errors we have. And that's the only way to set those kinds of setups where we have many different documents. We have to set up our Intelli-Tags, set up our OCR zones, then we process everything, we go through the errors, we refine, then we rinse and repeat. That's the only way to get a very nice result. You can see it takes a little bit, but we are working with 40 documents and we are doing Intelli-Tag. That means that ChronoScan has to read the entire page. We can already see some values coming in. Sometimes we have really low confidence on the OCR reading. On those we might want to check, and more values popping up. We can see we have probably pretty good Intelli-Tag lists. Many documents don't have the total amount, and others don't have date nor net and the invoice number. But the invoice number is pretty good. So what we can do here is we can either go up here and search and then view documents with errors, and that will only display documents with errors here. So we can open, take a look at it, and to not see all of that text, we can just disable view text. And let's take a look at what is wrong. We can see that that value is not being read. And why is that? Probably because we have something here. Let's say we do edges on. You can see it is being read, but the problem is if we enable adjust, we'll get a problem with our order values. So we can either choose this one or the other one. I will just not select this one, and this one is going to be manual input. 3427.71. So that's going to be manual input. We can't have it as automatic. And to move to the next document with error, this is the way. Here we can see we have document number and document number for the invoice number and the date. So here we know we are going to do OCR zones. We don't want to mess up our Intelli-Tag lists. Although I'm not sure why Intelli-Tag is not reading that. Let's take a look. Invoice number, nearest code, fuzzy 0. Document is different. I'm making a mess. So let's add that text to the invoice number. That's the one. Let's create it here. Nearest valid, nearest code. We want to make it global. We click OK. Let's see how it works. Perfect. Now for the date, we have to create a OCR zone. So I'm just going to create here, OCR zone mode, and I'm going to do the date. Perfect. Net total. Now we don't get the total net. Let's create the Intelli-Tag for that one. Back to Intelli-Tag. Select the text, fuzzy 0. Because we have many documents and amount at the right, we make it global and click OK. Perfect. Now invoice total, and you can see why invoice is not a good one. You can see the total also is being captured, is capturing the wrong value here, and that one is going to show all the values it sees here. What I'm going to do to fix that, we could either create a OCR zone, but we can also create a type-specific Intelli-Tag. Invoice total, nearest valid amount at the right, we click OK. Let's see how it works. Perfect. So that's how we fix our errors. Let's keep moving. Here we can see that since we changed our Intelli-Tags, we have better readings. But for instance, the invoice number is reading the wrong one here. So what we are going to do is we have to remove that one and create zones, because we are having problem with the two mislabeled fields here. I'm just going to invoice number and let's create a OCR zone. And that's it. That's basically what goes behind it. We have to always make a compromise, and we can see here the date is not being well read. Let's try to go to the advanced options. Again, we click here. Let's adjust. Doesn't work. We can see here the reading and the value that will be attributed to the field. Let's try some of those filters here. Okay, dilate works. So we're just going to click OK and leave it as it is. Let's move to the next one. You can see we still have date problem because of those slashes here. Let's try delete again, and it works, but now let's try to go back to the other one, and keeps working. Perfect. So let's just leave it as it is. Let's move again, and we can see those are all the same type, so it's not worth to keep working on them. Let's move to another type. Type 9 here. We get the invoice number. Perfect. We don't have the invoice dates. Let's add it. Although I'm not sure. Yeah, it's being read, but we have 2 dots here, so it's different. I mean, I use fuzzy to 0 because we have many documents, and I did that setup before. I know the problems we have with fuzzy different from 0. But if you have very similar documents with very clear text, you might want to experiment with the fuzzy setting to make sure you don't have to set up new Intelli-Tags all the time like this. I'm just going to use date. That's the invoice date, nearest valid date. Make it global, click OK. And you can see the date is perfect. Now we are not getting the total. We don't have that text. Let's make a Intelli-Tag for totals. It's not global, fuzzy at 0. We want the 2 dots. We click OK. Perfect. And also subtotals. Let's create a new one with subtotals. And you can see we don't have to highlight the entire word. ChronoScan already sees that it is a full sentence, like subtotals and the 2 dots. Fuzzy 0, nearest amount at the right. Make it global and then click OK. Now it's good again. Let's move to the next type. We were on type 9. Those are all type 9, type 10. And I'm not going to set up any more because we are running out of time. You can see here we have a very big mess. So what we have to do is just make OCR zones. And OCR zones will override the values that Intelli-Tags capture. So I'm just going to go on net total, OCR zones mode. Net total is goods. I'm just going to create a zone here. And you can see it overrides the Intelli-Tag. That one is capturing the correct one, and the other one is also. Let me turn off labels. You can see it is correct. So I'll just leave it be. It might not work for all of our documents that are type 10, but if it works now, let's just leave it be. Let's just do one more on type 11. Let's see why it's wrong, because the net total is not being captured. It's a different text. But that also might make a mess because we have a total GBP, and that total GBP might also make a big mess. So here I might want to go on total and make a Intelli-Tag with the entire text here. And that will be type specific, nearest valid amount. Just to make sure ChronoScan will always capture the correct one. And then I will make one for the net total. Because when we have validation rules like those for invoices, ChronoScan will sum up the net total with the text total, and if it doesn't equal the invoice total, it will display the error. This one, it doesn't need to be global. Let's see how it works, and amount at the right again. I'll just click OK, leave fuzzy at 1. It is working. Perfect. Let's now move to other ones. Let's see type 6 and why we have problem. That's that type again. You can see it is not a Intelli-Tag problem. It is a OCR zone problem, OCR problem, because it is reading that dot as A1. So we don't have other option. We can either create a zone here or manually input. I like the idea of creating a zone here because the zone will most probably get it right. There we go. It got it perfectly right. And then we can move on. And that's it. Now we would just reset everything and then reprocess and see the errors. I'm just going to process everything again to see how the little changes we made affect. You can see we have more values, but we are only seeing the documents with errors. Let's go on search up here and view all documents. Let's select everything and process again, because many times what will happen is when we change our Intelli-Tag lists, we might get errors that we didn't have before. So we have to be careful with that. You can see we have some different errors, but we have much more data capture. What I'm going to do now is show you how to set up our suppliers, and that's the other type of Intelli-Tag we can have. Let's open here. And you can see that's Blueberry. But let's say they don't have that text here, or they don't have a readable text, just a logo and a text that ChronoScan or the OCR engine can't read. What I'm going to do is You can see we have an email here, we have phone numbers. We are going to use some piece of information about the supplier that ChronoScan will look for. So we are going to create an Intelli-Tag list with the supplier information, and every time ChronoScan finds that information, it will set the supplier field. Let's see how it works. I will click on the supplier field, and then I will select that address here. It's good enough. I will click OK, and I will make a list called suppliers. I will click OK. That's the text. And instead of search a value, we want to set a static value. And we don't want to set the address. We want to set it as Blueberry Software. That's perfect. We want to make it type specific, probably, but if we get different invoices from the same supplier, we want to make it global. Since we have only supplier type specific invoices here, I will make it type specific and then click OK. And you can see that ChronoScan is not finding it. We might have to improve our Intelli-Tag. Let's just make it one line, because maybe 2 lines is not good for Intelli-Tags. Perfect. We'll click OK. Let's see how it works now. And you can see it works perfectly. And on the newer versions, not the newer ones, but the version that's going to come after that version we are using here, we are going to be able to import those types of information from our suppliers into a Intelli-Tag list. So we will set up a database connection. We will use our company's database to import supplier information into ChronoScan, and then we will import that supplier information inside one Intelli-Tag list. So we don't have to set up manually every supplier. We just need to import our database, and then ChronoScan will know what to put on the supplier field, depending on the types of supplier information we have here. As you can see here, we have every time ChronoScan finds that address, it will set the supplier field with Blueberry Software. Let's do for one more to make sure we got it. That is BTech. What I'm going to do, we could use even the tax number, but here we have had to omit it. I'm going to use the address again. So that's 97 Roadway Road. I'm going to select the supplier field, click on the Intelli-Tag and select that text here. We can even use the company name, but I'm going to use the address again, and then set a static value. And now BTech Limited. And that's perfect. That's type specific, and then I'll click OK. And you can see it is set correctly. And that's how you do it. And if you have your pre-made Intelli-Tag lists and you want to assign a field to a pre-made Intelli-Tag list, you just have to go on this button here, open the field properties. And down here, you'll see Intelli-Tag search. And if you click on the menu here, you'll see all of the Intelli-Tag lists on ChronoScan. And then you can just assign the field. And you can even make it read only. That means that only that ChronoScan will make that field as read only. You won't be able to edit the data. And that's it for this setup. Now let's take a look at the second setup with the splits. The first step is to create a new job again. Let's click on the new batch button and the job wizard. And I'm going to call it multiple page invoice capture. There we go. I'll click on next. Again, we are going to do Intelli-Tag manually. Next, we have multi-image documents and we are going to split them manually. I will click on next. We are going to use invoice fields, but this time I'm just going to use the supplier and the invoice total. I will disable that one, we don't need it, and then I will click on next. We are going to set up the export later, and let's make sure everything is good. As usual it is. Let's finish and create our first batch. Multiple pages, invoices, invoice capture, batch 1. There we go. Now I will import just as I did for the other setup. Import images, start input, and then I will define the folder. Again, it is on the desktop, but now it is the multi-page documents. I'll click OK, and then import on the green button. You will recognize those documents from the previous webinar. And also the other ones, thankfully, they also have barcodes. So we are going to use the barcodes to split our documents. Let's take a look here. That's the other type of document we have. So we are talking about 2 document types. It has that barcode, and that's what we are going to use to split. If we couldn't use the barcode, we would have to look for something else to split our documents. We could use the page number here or something else on the document that would make sense. So since we are going to split using barcodes, I will click on the document and then we'll create the barcode reading. There we go. I want only the horizontal one. If you want to learn more about it, just check out the other webinar. I will clip a little bit on the bottom, 50. Okay, and I want that every time this barcode is read, I want to insert a new document. And I know the document begins on this page. So I just click OK. I don't want to create a barcode field and I don't want to reprocess. Now I have to make sure that that reading is reading that barcode as well. So just open again the barcode read settings and I can see it is picking up that barcode. So I'm good to go. I will just close that and remove my documents and then run the import module again. And now the documents will be split. And that's perfect because most of the work is already done. Now, other things to keep in mind when we are working with Intelli-Tags is that the Intelli-Tag reads all of our pages. So we have to keep that in mind. We have here that one. So let's create an Intelli-Tag list for the invoice total. Click on the field, click on the Intelli-Tag search, and then let's select the text. That's the one I want. I want to assign to a new list, and that won't work probably. So I'll just make it total invoice, like this. Okay, it won't work because it already exists, but I don't want to use the previously created one. I just want to create my own Intelli-Tag list for those documents here. That's the text, and I want to look for the nearest valid amount at the right. And I want it to be global. I'll click OK. Let's activate the Intelli-Tag, and you can see it is perfect. Now let's look at the other documents. Let's see how the Intelli-Tag works with it. We might have to add that, and let's see how to add it manually. You can see here that's total. Total is not a good one, so we would probably want either a OCR field or just use a type specific Intelli-Tag. I'll just click here to open the Intelli-Tag options, and then I will add a new value that will be total. And fuzzy at 0, of course, and the nearest valid amount at the right. I will set fuzzy at 0, obviously, and then the nearest valid amount at the right. I want it to be global. Well, I don't want it to be global because that text is not very specific. Oh, actually, I'm looking at the wrong one. We want that one here. So I'm just going to change the text to match that one down here. That's the one we are looking for. That's not good, and that's because it is here. That one is the final one that we are looking for, actually. I will make it global and then click OK. When I close it, the document will be processed again, and you can see it works perfectly. Now you can see we have a validation going on here, but we don't need that validation. I will just click on the field, go on the field properties, and down here on the onValidate document scripting onValidate, I will just remove that validation script. I will save, and now we won't have any more validation. Now for the supplier, I want to do this again to make sure it is clear. This is Ono. So we need to find something that relates that document to Ono. We have here some other things, but down here we have a website here, ono.s. So what I'm going to do is to create a Intelli-Tag list using that website here. You can see it is selected. I will click yes, we want a new one. And I will say multi-page suppliers. There we go. I will just click OK. And we want that text with fuzzy 1 is enough. And I don't want to search a value. I want to set a static value. That would be, oh no. That's type specific. Depending on your documents, you don't want it type specific. I'll just make it global and click OK. And you can see we have Ono here. And the other documents, they have a different supplier. Let's wait for ChronoScan to read the document. There we go. We have Gestel. And Gestel, we don't have also the information here, but down here, again, we have a website. So what I'm going to do is create another Intelli-Tag or add that value to our Intelli-Tag list. I can come here on the Intelli-Tag options, add a new one, and type in. There we go. And then set static value to Gestel. And I can make it global or not, depending on my documents. When I click OK and OK again, you can see Gestel is here, and you can even see why. It is because that field is being found on our documents. So that's it, guys. I hope you understood that Intelli-Tag is a specific, a special type of trigger. And every time a Intelli-Tag is found on our entire documents, that means even the other pages, a action is triggered. We can either set the value for a field, just like we did for the suppliers, or we can look for something around that text. Here it is the amount, and on the other documents it is codes or amounts. You can even use dates. So that's it, guys. I hope you liked it, and I will see you on the next webinar. Bye bye.